I want to apologize. I apologize. If you contacted your local senator in your state and you told them that you had a national security concern about somebody attempting to illegally engage you in contract terms that were not only unconstitutional, but that could potentially reveal national security threats as well as potentially even international security threats, as in they represent themselves to be in network or in league with entities that take on responsibility for national security and international security issues, I want to apologize. If you tried to alert them and they just completely ignored you, and especially if they took what you gave them, hoping that they would do their job and reconcile those issues, but instead engaged in some sort of gamesmanship that puts you or your community at risk, including in connection with illegal activities associated with speculation that leveraged risk associated with the safety of you and your community against demands being placed on law enforcement, and that when they took those considerations and concerns regarding those illegal contract terms that were attempting to extort you, that it ended up exacerbating the situation locally, so that other terms that may or may not actually be in a position of attempting to extort law enforcement into cooperation with illegal activity as well ended up escalating. And so it resulted in litigious action, including through the judicial branch of government, which may or may not also have its own constitutional considerations. And now we are where we are, right? Is this true? Is it true that on May 21st of 2001, the governor of Oregon signed a law that permits covenants not to compete? It says the current statutory framework for non compete agreements, ORS 653.295. Under the new law, non compete agreements with employees that do not satisfy all statutory requirements for enforceability will be void and unenforceable. It seems to have an income of $100,533. So if you are in a specific salary range, non competes regarding employees making at least $100,533. Well, here's the thing: what if you're actually producing, and because of the terms of the non compete, which are illegal and unconstitutional, you're not getting acknowledged, and you're certainly not getting compensated? And see, this sounds like part of the problem. You know, let somebody know. Somebody tried to engage me in an illegal contract that not only violates basic terms of contract law, but violates the terms of the Constitution. And by virtue of what they're trying to say, I'm required to do as part of this non compete, and in consideration of the network they've put themselves in, this has national and even international security implications. I'm letting you know directly. Did they do something equivalent to say, well, I'm sorry, you don't meet the income level? But if you have concerns, don't worry. We're going to give your work to somebody else who does, and then we're going to cancel their non competes. That's what this sounds like. Is that what ended up happening on June 18th? See, the article I'm looking at in the National Law Review is for May 28th, right? How many days between the 28th and the 18th? You know how many days that is? 21. 21 days later, what happens? Portland Police's entire crowd control unit resigns after indictment of officers. Let me ask you a question. Are Portland police authorized to use tear gas? Do Portland police have the authority to use things that would have been covered under presidential executive orders regarding considerations of potential violation of international treaties related to chemical weapons? You see, there's very specific parameters around what's allowed to be used in terms of crowd control when one has to take into consideration America's obligations regarding chemical weapons. It's one of those things Congress should have been very, very mindful of when they were doing all those hedges on Hong Kong, right? So if you're somebody that's in a situation where you attempted to contact your senators, your congressperson, maybe local legislators, maybe even the office of the governor. Oh my goodness, did you contact the attorney general's office and tell them that you had been required to engage in illegal contract terms? And that as a result of these illegal contract terms, you were being attempted for extortion into cooperation with illegal activity? And that you were concerned that that was putting you in an actual situation of competing around matters of public safety with people outside of that specific network. And then somebody ended up having a case, and now the entire crowd control unit is no longer employed. How many people that work for the Portland Police Department make over $100,533? How many people in the city of Portland make over $100,533? This is a very important matter. It's happened recently. So I understand if you're having some concern and some consideration, especially if somebody keeps trying to use your children as leverage or the safety of your children as leverage. See, the same kinds of things that trigger someone to understand they haven't paid. You didn't pay. Well, that's not an acceptable or legitimate form of currency. It doesn't matter. You haven't paid. Well, that's the same kind of thing that would be a part of a illegal contract term, including an illegal non-compete. This is what traffickers do. They say, you're only allowed to talk to who I say. You're only allowed to get compensation when I give it to you. You're not allowed to tell anybody anything about what we're doing that might speak ill of us. That would be competing interest. You're not allowed to try to bring anybody else in without our permission, and you're certainly not allowed to go somewhere else with what you've learned here or what you've been doing here and tell them about what happened. That's not legal, right? So you can't try to deal with it just in a matter of being about a non-compete. If somebody's telling you you're obligated to a contract that compels you to perform activities that are illegal, even if you believe and understand that police brutality is a problem and for political reasons you support reform of local law enforcement, including restitution for abuses of power, nobody has a right to say you are contractually obligated to conform to acts of extortion, regardless of your income level, or rather, regardless of what they will allow to be set as your taxable wage rate, so that then they can use you within the terms of that non-compete to waive off other people's taxes. And it's through that kind of process that leads to the kind of escalation that then ends up again being put on people within the municipalities that are collateral on the security instruments drawn on to pay out these settlements. So it's going to be a very, very important matter in terms of how Portland and the state of Oregon deals with this. Because now that the crowd control unit has quit en masse, that means that the crowd control unit and the personnel and their human capital contributions are no longer circulating within the municipal finance stream. So what's going to happen with those resources and obligations instead? That is going to be very important. I certainly hope it is not going toward any effort to try to compel you to continue performing in some sort of illegal non-compete requirement around the manufacturer of either literal or derivative chemical or biological weapons.